this decoupled back. I don't know why I keep losing my videos that I make. I just made a video, I think, with maybe 3 stars. If for some reason when I do the video instead of the lives, if it gets a certain length, it just cuts off, and I'm guessing it just wiped my video clean and it starts over, and I lose the video that I made. It's frustrating, but okay, here we go. I had said that I was going to do something a little different, which would be I'm going to read my wife's story at the beginning of my book reading. I will do her story at the beginning. So you'll be able to get most of the symptoms, because she noted her symptoms, and some of the other women, they don't necessarily name all the symptoms that they had prior to being diagnosed, but she does. And also the other reason being, for some reason, it was something I felt the need to do. I don't know if it's for myself or but it was something that I was led to do to help y'all know the symptoms and the 2 tests that are given, which is the CA-125 for ovarian cancer. It's a blood test, and for breast cancer it's BRCA2. It is also a blood test. And so hopefully anybody that's new will be able to get that, hear those 2 blood tests that you take. Okay, and here I go again. I'm gonna start off with my wife's story, and it is called Living the American Dream. Okay, it's Living the American Dream. Today is my 52nd birthday, a day I really didn't think I'd live to see. You see, I was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer and offered no hope of surviving beyond 3 months after the initial diagnosis. That was 2 years ago. Like many liberated women of my era, I was living the American dream, free, black, successful, and very much aware of how many deaths were related to the various types of cancer. My journey began in April 2007, the day of my diagnosis. My symptoms began months prior to my 50th birthday. I undeniably had a textbook case of ovarian cancer. I was gaseous, immediately felt felt full after every meal, suffered loss of appetite, developed abnormal menstrual cycles, and finally developed abdominal swelling and bloating. I was treated for everything from acid reflux to parasites, and even told that I was pregnant before undergoing a simple blood test that could have saved my life. By my 50th birthday, I had gone misdiagnosed for 6 months prior to my medical examination, an examination that would not have taken place if I had not refused to leave the doctor's office until he figured out what was wrong with me. Only then was I scheduled for a colonoscopy, and the thought of cancer arose. I underwent the colonoscopy, which found several nodes that were deemed non-cancerous in nature. However, my symptoms continued and grew even worse. As luck would have it, I returned to the clinic for further treatment when a female physician, one I often saw, but who had been out on vacation and was just returning, took one look at me and my bloated stomach and immediately wait a minute, I lost myself. And immediately asked when I had had a mammogram. I replied, "You know that I have a scheduled medical exam annually, so what's the deal?" With that look in her eyes, she immediately ordered blood work and scheduled an ultrasound and CAT scan for the following morning. Morning came soon enough, and I was off to the imaging facility, not knowing what to expect. The staff was courteous and all went well until I lay on the small exam table and the ultrasound began. My background is in the field of technology, so I was familiar with the images projected by the ultrasound. I could see the large mass, and it wasn't good. My heart sank. At some point, I choked down a bottle of barium and proceeded on to the CT scan. All I could visualize was the size of the mass located in my abdomen. Within 24 hours, I was referred to Baylor University Medical Center and Dr. Carolyn Matthews. By now, I was mad as hell and wondering why a correct diagnosis had not been made sooner, especially since I showed all of the known symptoms of the disease. Sadly, I had no idea just how bad it was to be. I knew that I had to tell my family and those closest to me something. What? As my partner, D-Cop, and I entered Baylor Simmons Cancer Center, the sound of the revolving doors rotated behind us seemed endless. The sight of so many cancer patients, young and old, stifled me, and the smell of chemotherapy was gagging. We made our way to the second floor, where there I was to meet Dr. Matthews for the first time. My only thought was that I really hoped she had her act together. My sister Beatrice and Lee Cobb were seated in the outer reception area as I proceeded back into a small confined room, housing what seemed to be a very large table. Facing me was a plastic sculpture of the female reproductive organs that indicated the various types of ovarian cancer. Within 10 to 15 minutes, a young nurse introduced herself to me, provided me with numerous documents to complete, and asked me if I had any questions. My answer was yes. What exactly is wrong with me? Up until this point, no one, including my physician, has said the word cancer. She looked at me as if I was crazy, and I looked back at her just as stupid as I could and asked, well, bless her heart. She looked deeply into my eyes, took my hand and said, darling, the doctor will be with you shortly. Time seemed to stand still as I sat there staring at that plastic sculpture. Finally, Dr. Matthews came in and introduced herself to me. Her voice was soft and soothing, and I immediately felt at ease. Our conversation progressed, and I again asked the question, what's wrong with me? She looked puzzled and said, test results indicate a large mass on your right ovary and quite possibly ovarian cancer. I was stunned. I didn't hear another thing she had to say. At some point, I was scheduled for a biopsy. As I made my way out of the patient area and back to the waiting room, I could see Decop listening to her iPod. I tapped her on the shoulder and simply said, let's go. She asked what the doctor had said, and my reply was that we'll talk about it when we got home. I asked her if she was hungry. I decided we'll go to our favorite restaurant for Mexican food and a multitude of Long Island iced teas. All the while I was contemplating how I would tell everyone what was going on. Telling my family and friends. Once home, I sat and told Decop what the deal was. Cancer. Decop, a little shorty who's cute as a button and the type of person who internalizes everything, was now staring at me in total dismay and asked, what do you mean, cancer? My only reply to her was, yep. We sat down on the couch and just shook our heads. I've been shot, mugged, knifed, ran over, struck by lightning, and survived an airplane crash, and 2 tours in Kuwait during Operation Desert Storm, and now this. What the hell? Now it was time to tell the family. I began calling my youngest sister, Beatrice. Beatrice was smooth, sophisticated, who's damn good looking and smart as a whip. I knew that I would have a lot of explaining to do when it came to her, so I just wanted to get this over with. Sure enough, she began, what type of cancer? What are they going to do? Chemo, radiation, what? There's one good thing about having a younger sister. You know that she's going to have everyone's phone number on speed dial. By the next afternoon, the posse was rolling in from Houston and San Antonio. I could barely get the door open as they burst in and began asking, what are you going to do? Is your will in order? What about power of attorney? What about a simple hello? These people were a trip. I was still trying to wrap my mind around what was going on with me. So the commotion was a bit too much to handle. As I stood there stunned, my older sister decided that I wasn't of sound mind and they should handle everything for me. I immediately let them know that my mental state was just fine. Everyone had instantly become an authority on cancer as well as my life. This was becoming a very stressful situation in a very short time. By day 3, I had enough of them, and they realized it. Offended and unable to understand that I had to come to terms with what was going on. They packed up and departed, all except for Beatrice, who planned to stay for the biopsy scheduled for later that week. In private, Beatrice asked me why I didn't want my family around. I had to explain to her in great detail that it wasn't that I didn't want them there, but that I needed for all of this to soak in. Furthermore, I was and still am very independent and used to handling things my way. She looked at me and said, "Well, you're not alone in this." We prayed together and asked for strength and healing. Tuesday arrived right on time, and the 3 of us zigged off to Baylor. Beatrice drove with that Houston type of vengeance. The cop rode shotgun, and I hung on for dear life in the back seat of the GMC. Our arrival and check-in went well. I dressed in that nasty little gown and awaited transport. I was so hungry. I was rolled up and down hallways only to be parked in line with other unfortunate patients. After about 15 minutes, it was my turn. What did I expect? Here I was on the table being prepped with this guy sticking needles into my abdomen to numb the area. Well, I have to tell you, they didn't use enough of that numbing stuff because I came right off of that table when they began to stroke up and down with that sample collector. My eyes were nailed to the ceiling, and I was visibly going into shock. I was cold. I was ice cold with sweat pouring off of my body. I recalled being restrained as they drew the last sample. The doctor attempted to explain what was to happen. However, I really didn't care. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. When returned to my room, I found myself alone. My sister and Decop had gone out in search for food since none of us had eaten. Alone, my thoughts were of how lonely and sad this place was. Hours passed before I was informed of the result of the biopsy, which indicated malignant cells. We all just dropped our heads. At some point, a CT scan was conducted, and I was scheduled to meet Dr. Matthews. My stomach was swollen, and I had dropped approximately 80 pounds within the past 6 months. I entered into the exam room where the sound of Yanni offered a smooth serenade, and my doctor drank herbal tea. This meeting with Dr. Matthews was more informative, and we discussed a plan of action. I was in stage 4, meaning the cancer had spread to other organs. I was to immediately begin chemotherapy, and no radiation. The tumor was massive with the CA-125 off the scale. I then asked about the life expectancy of an individual in stage 4. Her response was that normally ovarian cancer, if caught in the early stages, has an average lifespan of about 5 to 7 years. Since my cancer was so advanced and aggressive, the odds of 5 years were slim, and in reality it would be best to take life day to day. I staggered out to the waiting room and discussed the conversation with Beatrice and Decop. By now, they both knew not to ask me too many questions. My thought pattern was only to grasp the information given to me at hand and keep it simple. I had absolutely no intention of dying before getting that first Social Security check at age 65. My sister remained with me for another week before returning to Houston. Decop remained my guardian. Chemotherapy. I have never been able to tolerate needles, and now I was in a living hell with 6 hours of chemotherapy and blood tests every week. This went on from April to June, and the chemo wasn't working. We tried another drug. Now every Monday it was blood work and chemo. This one's not working either. By now I look like a 5'7" naked chicken. My stomach was so hyperextended and filled with fluid to the size of a pregnant woman carrying triplets, and my hips looked like they were pieces of bologna flapping in the wind. My teeth appeared to be larger than my head. I slept most of the day and prayed for the remainder. I suffered severe constipation in the beginning and finally was able to experience relief only after taking every known laxative. My God, this is insane. One day, as I stood in the shower, unable to see my feet because of my swollen belly, I cried out that I wasn't going out like this. I asked God to free me from this disease, and I chose life. Family and friends continued to rally around me, being as supportive as one could imagine. Daily, I received calls and cards from my sisters and coworkers. When I was hungry, the doorbell would always ring, and there would be someone just on the other side of it bearing food. When my spirits were at their lowest, I would receive prayer in the form of letters and emails from friends and strangers. When my yard needed attending, the young boys from down the street whom I mentored would cut it. When I looked like hell, the girls and I would do lunch, and they always built up my spirits. Lastly, as I endured hours of chemotherapy, the cop was by my side, making sure all was good. It was now September the 7th, and none of the drugs was working. The CA-125 wouldn't drop, and finally, hopes of the trial drug was offered. I was taken off chemotherapy prior to entering the trial drug program, so I decided a road trip was in order since I was deemed terminally ill. Then I would go out in style. I began by having 6 liters of fluid drawn off my stomach so I could move around a little better. Purchased my dream car, a Jaguar XJ8, Bottle Road, Alice. Withdrew $5,000 out of the bank and bought 2 bottles of whiskey and 2 6-packs of Coke and headed on our way to Pointless Unknown. Of course, the cop wasn't going to let me drive alone, so she became my road dog. We traveled to Oklahoma and experienced their centennial celebration, gambled on the penny slots, and floated through Bricktown. Next, we traveled throughout the Texas Hill Country, ate rattlesnakes chili, and listened to very bad country music. There we rented a small shack up a cabin for a week and enjoyed all LBJ's country had to offer. The cop was a bit afraid when I said that we were going to live in a shack for a week out on the prairie. This poor girl has never experienced scenery without street lights or heard the call of the wild in the night. It was great. Each morning I would make my way out to the porch with a cup of coffee and watch the wildlife begin their day. The peace was overwhelming. I would meditate and pray each day until a calm overtook me. One morning I decided that if God would allow me to make it through this, then I would build a cabin and offer it to people afflicted with cancer and those who just needed that calm. We ended our road trip by cruising up Highway 281, returning to Dallas. Since being off treatment, I found myself stronger with an increased appetite. Man, I love bacon. I began a simple exercise program in which I would walk from my corner to the end of the block. I know that doesn't sound much, but for someone who couldn't walk from their bedroom to the front door in under 20 minutes, it was considered remarkable. While on my walk late one evening, I was contacted by a representative from Baylor's Research Center, where the trial drug program was being performed. The young man began by asking me how I was feeling. My response was absolutely great. He then stated, "That's good. Now, Ms. B, I have to tell you that you are no longer a candidate for the trial drug program." My heart sank, and the strength in my legs gave way. It was all I could do to grab hold of a mailbox to steady myself. He went on to say that my cancer had stabilized with no indications of new growth. My response was, "Okay, what's next?" He said quite pleasantly that I would be hearing from my doctor soon. Within minutes, Dr. Matthews called, and I was still clenching the mailbox. She immediately asked me what I had been doing. I replied, praying. Again, she asked what exactly I had been doing. Again, I responded, praying. Needless to say, I was in her office shortly after the conversation. Every Monday, I went for treatment and continued on with my week. I began to make plans for longer, from day to day, but now week to week. From October 2007 until September 2008, my CA-125 continuously declined. I returned to work at the amazement of family, co-workers, and doctor with a mission on my mind. That promise I had made to God was weighing on me with an indescribable sense of urgency to step into action. The ugly couch cabin. I began searching for the property within a 100-mile radius of Dallas, armed only with the premonition conveyed to me by my sister. I began searching in East Texas for cabins. Within 1 week, I found and made an offer on a funky little cabin with a nasty wooden couch placed on its front porch. The realtor, an ex-used car saleswoman, was more than happy to assist me. We met at the cabin and spoke for hours. This would be her first sale. While we were in conversation, she noticed a small teal ribbon on the collar of my blouse and asked what type of cancer it represented. My reply was ovarian. She then asked if I was a survivor. I stated yes. She went on to tell me about her experience with breast cancer and spiritually how she had changed. We prayed at the entrance of the cabin that I would be successful in purchasing it and that we would both be completely healed by God. The transaction to purchase the cabin went well until the day of the home inspection. I decided it would be in my best interest to be on hand for the inspection. So did my realtor. We met at the cabin and chatted for a while when we noticed another car pulling into the drive. We both expected it to be the home inspector, but it turned out to be the home owner. We exchanged greetings. Then I noticed the pink ribbon on her bumper. I asked if she was a survivor, and her response was yes. We all looked at one another and began to exchange stories. By the end of the afternoon, we had laughed, cried, and broken bread together. I told her the cabin was intended for rehabilitation and would be offered free to cancer patients and anyone that had a terminal illness. She then told me that she had initially purchased the cabin to have a place to die from cancer. I closed on the property in mid-August 2008, and from that day until December 2008, I have worked endlessly on refurbishing it. It wasn't until I drove by a lonely billboard located west of Canton, Texas on Highway 20 that states, "Jesus said, it is finished," that I knew that was my mission was complete. My CA 125 is on the rise once again, and I've been placed on another waiting list for a new drug program. I've made the decision to retire from my job I love so much and have decided to make the most of my remaining time. I have come to realize several things. God has a sense of humor. You will get you will get out of life what you put into it. We all have a mission in life. Our lives are to be enjoyed and never stop believing in miracles. So if you are ever traveling down Highway 35 and are in need of a quiet place to rest, just look for the Ugly Couch Cabin. It's the one with the big silver gates. And this is my wife's story, Bertha. I call her B. Okay. Let's see if I can find this second story that next story is titled, Who Are These Women? I asked myself this question as I tried to sit down quickly and calmly in the room. I could hardly believe there were so many women, since I had expected perhaps only a handful would be part of an ovarian cancer support group at Baylor. I was a deer in headlights. I had only been diagnosed with ovarian cancer for less than a month. My mother thought a group meeting would be swell for me. I went simply because it is easier to say yes to my mother than no. My journey started in February 2006 when I went at the last minute to see my family doctor prior to leaving for Washington, D.C. later that week. I had a slight pain in my right side. Nothing seemingly significant, but it was constant. My pants also seemed tight on me, and I thought maybe I had something going on with my appendix. Let me emphasize the word maybe again. Dr. Donnell didn't really give me much of an exam, but nevertheless, he told me to get a CT scan at the hospital. I looked at him like he was crazy. I was a busy woman and had miles and miles to go before I slept that night. I had a standing monthly dinner date that evening and called my partner to tell her I was going to get a scan and that I would just meet her and the others at the restaurant. No alarm bells, just something that I needed to do prior to dinner. But no sooner had I arrived at the restaurant that Dr. Donnell called and said I had a mass on my right ovary. Okay, I said, and then he told me that I would need surgery and to cancel my trip to DC. I said, okay, again. He then told me that Baylor was the best hospital and that he would find a surgeon for me and to expect a call the next day with a name and numbers. I remember going back to the table and telling everyone it would be okay. The next day he called and gave me Dr. Stringer's name and number. It was Valentine's Day, and little did I know that I would love this man for the rest of my life. I was in a meeting and only called Dr. Stringer's number at a break. When I called the number, the voice on the other end simply said Texas Oncology. I was sure I had written down the number incorrectly. People were walking by asking me if I wanted a cup of coffee. What did I think about the presentation? And I was thinking, wait just a second while I clear up this mistake. I turned my full attention now to this voice on the other end of the line and calmly but more clearly said that I was calling for a Dr. Stringer. I suspect I even spelled out Stringer. But again, I was told I had the correct number and I was to see Dr. Stringer on Friday. Okay, I said, but for the record, no one has uttered the word cancer. So why am I to see an oncologist if I just need surgery? I was assured that Dr. Stringer would answer my questions on Friday. Clearly, it was not my appendix, But then, what was going on with my body, I just knew it was not cancer. But then it was confirmed that indeed I had ovarian cancer. I was not okay. I had stage 3, a clear cell ovarian cancer. My chemotherapy treatments were to start immediately. I was far more anxious about chemotherapy than the surgery, and I will always be grateful to a dear woman named Janet who talked me off the ledge the night before my first infusion. Who knew that terms such as infusion, debulking, and CA-125 that sound so innocuous could be so terrifying? So there I sat, the perfect newbie to this group of women with ovarian cancer, scared, overwhelmed, and not wanting to talk one syllable for fear of crying and not stopping. But cry I did. I gave my mother the eye, indicating afterward that I was not going to talk about this meeting and that it would be, in fact, be my last. I would proceed with the rest of my treatments with the wonderful support of my family and friends. This group was not for me. I did not need them. My chemotherapy treatment brought in 2 of my dearest friends from college days, and it was Robin and Carolyn who introduced me to these women. I was getting blood work for my next chemo treatment, and it was ironically Cancer Survivor Day at Baylor. Sure enough, Robin and Carolyn found the infamous ovarian cancer group and could hardly wait to tell me. I coolly looked at my friends and said, I have been to the group already, and that it was not for me. Of course, they did not pay attention to a word I said, and in a flash, I was surrounded by some of these gals in the lobby, saying how good it was to see me again, how great my color was, and what dear friends I had to come in to help me in haste and to escape. I promised I would try to come back to the group once my treatment was completed. While my last chemo session was challenging, in all truth, I had a fabulous time with my old pals who made me laugh and cry, rest and walk, and eat great meals, and who rubbed my bald head. My Dallas friend completed this amazing circle of subordinate love. Acts of their kindness still leaves me speechless. One of the sweetest gifts I received was an iPod filled with wonderful songs and pictures from my friends for each chemo session. The logistics of loading up that iPod every 21 days, I am sure would have made General Eisenhower insane. But like clockwork, it would appear with new songs and pictures. I would put on my headphones and check out, wrapped in warm blankets, bathed in the sound of pure love. I walked miles and miles to all those songs, building back my strength for the next round of chemo. It was and still is a gift that makes me smile and count my blessings for such dear friends. Upon getting the all clear of cancer from Dr. Stringer on the cusp of my 48th birthday, I had one hell of a party. Kathy, who had perfected shaving my head, did it one more time, and we both thought this ordeal was behind us. Oh, the joy we felt, the relief that was all over and done, and now all that was required was the return of my hair. And while that belief ushered me back to work and into the cadence of my day-to-day existence, an uneasy began to haunt me. I felt ungrateful and shallow, that I was allowing myself to feel anything but deep gratitude for being cancer-free. And it was because of these feelings that I again walked back into that beautiful circle of women at Baylor. I could not believe I was going to tell these brave and courageous women, many of whom were still in treatment, that I was anxious and depressed when I was cancer-free and no longer receiving chemo. Dr. Stringer said I was fine. My scans and my CA-125 was all perfect. I was sure someone would tell me to snap out of it and be thankful that my cancer scare was behind me. But my confession was instead greeted with knowing nods, warm eyes, and stories from others who compared that indeed the first year out was for many the hardest, who knew I was not alone. More importantly, these women helped me to understand there was no right way to feel, and that anything I was experiencing was perfectly normal. I then had to tell the group how in the beginning I wanted nothing to do with them. And again, these women looked at me knowingly, and one said, well, honey, we just will love you real big through this, and in no time, no doubt, you will return the favor. I am committed to returning the favor by helping other women navigate their new normal life upon a diagnosis of ovarian cancer. I am going to volunteer at Baylor on the 4th floor of Hopkins, so that when a woman learns she has ovarian cancer, she can meet someone who can be her gal pal, or hear that receiving chemo is manageable, or simply have someone just to sit there and listen. Like anyone who has ever heard the word cancer, let alone ovarian cancer, I have no idea if it will return. When I first started having my checkup, I would be tight as a coiled snake until I knew my CA-125 number and had Dr. Stringer confirm that all was well. I loved walking out of his office and driving away from my beloved Baylor. Each day is a treasure to me. I am much more aware of what's important to me. Feeling the sun on my face, having a good meal with my friends, the love of my family, the comfort of my faith, and my hair blowing wildly in the wind. I am at peace and can handle anything. I am now one of those women, and I am okay. And this story was written by Ann Faye. The last time I know, Ann is still alive. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to show y'all the cabin that we spoke about, that we bought and made it for rehabilitation for anybody that had a terminal illness. And And that's the end of that story. And I'll get off here before the video cut me out again. And I appreciate everybody for listening to the story. Please do the replays on all my stories. You will find them in my library. I appreciate it and thank you all very much. And I will see y'all in the next video.